Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into the wild world of Web3 economics, or as it's often called, coinomics. And to do this, we're going to use real hard data from the MetaKPK and KPBot ecosystem as our main case study. You know, by the time we wrap this up, a concept that honestly sounds completely backwards to traditional finance is going to make perfect logical sense to you. So let's just get right into it.
Okay, I want to hook you right away with a question that kind of defies logic. Why on earth would anyone deliberately destroy billions in digital currency? I mean, think about it. In traditional finance, central banks are literally constantly printing more money, right? So taking a massive vault of digital wealth and effectively setting it on fire, it sounds like absolute madness. But in the Web3 economy, this is actually a highly calculated strategic move. To figure out why an ecosystem would intentionally shrink its own wealth, we really need to look at how a digital token budgets its supply right from day one.
Okay, let's dive into this. Take a look at the numbers at the bottom of these two identical graphics for the KPK bot. On the left, if we use the Indian numbering system, the supply is listed as 932.5 crore. But over on the right, the international figure says 9.325 billion. Now, what we're looking at here is just a really brilliant example of how Web3 projects handle their global versus local marketing. It is the exact same total supply, just localized. Because 1 crore equals 10 million, 932.5 crore is mathematically identical to 9.325 billion. It just goes to show how a project tailors its communication so it's perfectly clear to totally different audiences around the world.
Now, let's actually break down that massive 9.325 billion total supply. To make the raw data a bit easier to digest, I've pulled out the biggest allocations here. Whenever you launch a digital token, you've got to budget its supply across the whole ecosystem. We've got some smaller slices in the mix, stuff like 0.75 billion for an investor's protection fund, 0.5 billion for construction and real estate NFTs, plus some community and team allocations. We also see 1 billion dedicated to a political AI metaverse, and 2 billion set aside for staking and reward circulation, which is basically there to incentivize users. But then there's that massive 5 billion slice, completely dominating the chart.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that absolute elephant in the room. Out of a total supply of 9.325 billion coins, a staggering 5 billion were allocated explicitly for a category just called burning. Yes, burning. That means over half of the entire initial supply was created with the sole, predetermined destiny of just being destroyed. They didn't save it for the devs, or a marketing push, or new tech. Nope, they budgeted it for destruction. Now, if you're sitting there wondering how throwing away money could possibly be a sound economic strategy, well, let's clarify what this term actually means in the crypto space. So, in crypto, token burning is simply the act of permanently removing digital currency from the circulating supply. Obviously, no one's literally setting servers on fire. It's more like a digital bonfire. Basically, by sending these tokens to a completely inaccessible address, locking them away forever where absolutely no one can use, trade, or sell them, the project is actively creating scarcity. The total pool of available money permanently shrinks. But the real question is, how does this actually play out over time? Is it just a one-off stunt or an ongoing strategy?
Let's look at the MetaKPK case study to see this deflation in action.
Look at this staggering number, 0.5 billion. That right there is the exact amount of MetaKPK that was permanently burned in just their most recent supply reduction, which the project marked as their 5th completed bot chain burn. 500 million tokens completely removed from the playing field in just one single coordinated ecosystem event. But it doesn't stop there. 3 billion. That is the total amount of MetaKPRK that has been actively removed from circulation to date across all these multiple burning events. Remember that initial budget of 5 billion we saw in the donut chart a minute ago? Well, they are actively executing on that promise. They've already chipped away 3 billion tokens from the world, locking them out of the active economy for good.
Which brings us to the climax right here, 7 billion. Because of these repeated digital bonfires, the total supply of the asset has officially dropped to 7 billion. That original 9.325 billion pie we started with, it's literally gone. The pie is fundamentally smaller now. And that is the sheer mathematical impact of token burning. Every single time a burn happens, the tokens you have left represent a slightly larger slice of that newly reduced total supply.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core difference in modern economic design. You see, unlike traditional inflationary models that constantly dilute your purchasing power through an ever-expanding money supply, the Meta KPK ecosystem actively enforces scarcity by deliberately and very transparently decreasing the supply through mechanisms like token burning. The whole goal of this deflationary tokenomics model is to support long-term ecosystem growth, utility, and ultimately, value. They're enforcing scarcity to protect and potentially enhance the value of the remaining tokens for their community.
Which leaves us with one final, kind of provocative thought. Are deflationary models the future of all digital finance? We've just seen how a project can allocate over half its wealth purely for destruction, and how systematically executing that burn creates a mathematically verifiable scarcity that's designed to drive a long-term value. It really challenges everything we know about traditional inflation. As Web3 and blockchain tech keeps evolving, it definitely makes you wonder if this kind of programmed scarcity is going to become the gold standard for all digital assets moving forward. Well, thank you so much for joining me to decode this data today. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I will see you in our next explainer.